I was speaking with a colleague of mine earlier today, and she said, I don't think that we can take 4 years of this. Do you? And I said, we are about 8 months into the 100-year war. I'm not quite sure 4 years is all we are set up for. Folks, this shit is hitting the fan in so many ways, in so many places. It is utterly dizzying. I am sitting here in partial darkness because I feel nauseous. That's how long I've been looking at screens and clicking on stories all day. Um, we're not in a good place, but we're going to unpack it and we're going to continue to get through it together for as long as these platforms exist, for as long as I have a microphone. We'll keep talking and we'll keep pushing forward. Because even if we are 8 months into the 100-year war, we got to buckle down, put 10 toes in the ground, and, push forward. That's what we got to do. That's what we're being called to do. You take breaks so you don't have breakdowns, but we're in it for the long haul. Welcome to the Danielle Moodie Show, dear friends. I'm so glad that you're here. Let's get into it. Welcome to the Danielle Moodie Show, Damnation. I am so glad that you are here. And someone just said to me in the chat, Danielle, it's actually been 10 months. I forgot that we were in October. I don't even know what fucking month we're in. I will say, before I jump into today's show, that today is October 7th. And it is, I don't even know what you would call this. The anniversary of the beginning of the war in Israel that has now been raging for 2 years. My heart continues to go out to those who lost their family on October 7th, for those who still remain hostages 2 years later. My heart breaks for the hundreds of thousands of Palestinians whose lives have been taken as revenge to the violence that took place on October 7th. We're living in a historically tragic moment, and there is so much death and so much destruction and so much pain and so much unnecessary trauma. And frankly, folks, if you feel that you have been forced into a position to choose one group's humanity over another, that's not the game that we should be playing. And it's the game that the oppressor has been playing since the beginning of time. And you can just hop, skip, and around this globe. And so many people have the same story of being told that they weren't worthy of existence, of self-determination, of freedom, of humanity. And so as this war, this genocide continues to rage on, I hope that we continue to stay present, that we don't turn away, and that we continue to seek truth at a time when that is becoming a precious commodity and a rarity. All right, so let's jump in, shall we? Here's where we are. National Guard troops arrive in Illinois for training amid Trump's push to deploy Guard in Chicago and Portland. Where things stand, and this is according to CNN, legal battles erupt. Donald Trump's efforts to deploy federalized National Guard troops to Democratic-led cities have prompted a series of legal showdowns. The president has said the deployments are aimed at fighting lawlessness, which he should then probably direct those officials, those troops, to the White House, and to aid ICE agents carrying out his sweeping immigration enforcement agenda. The Guard training in Illinois, uh, members of the Texas National Guard, mobilized Trump, have arrived at a military facility near Chicago. And why is that? Because the piece of shit governor in Texas, Greg Abbott, has decided to lend out his military force to Chicago. So you may be asking yourself, where is all of this headed? Not to a great place, I'll fucking tell you that. So, as we talked about yesterday, hearings are set for this week. Thursday is the day to watch and circle on your calendar. Illinois and Chicago sued to stop the federalization of the National Guard troops from their state and Texas. Meanwhile, the White House has asked an appeals court to pause an order from a judge in Oregon, Emmergott, who halted the National Guard deployment to Portland. Both cases are scheduled to be heard on Thursday. And, let's just let the cat out of the bag here, shall we? Because we don't have to pretend. What is Donald Trump thinking? I wonder what he wants to do here. I wonder whether or not this is going to end up with him invoking the Insurrection Act. And you don't have to fucking wonder, because he's been musing about it in public for the last several days. And what do we know about Donald Trump's musings? We know that oftentimes when he starts saying shit over and over again, like, the election was stolen, or, go and take your country back, or stand back and stand by, that these are directives that he is preparing, right, the country for the actions that he is getting ready to take. And I think that it is important, folks. So the first part of today's Danielle Moodie show is going to be providing us all with the necessary information, because information is power. We throw around, right, these statutes and these acts as if everyone in the United States, by the way, doesn't have like a 6th grade education and literacy rate, which they do. So let's break it down together, shall we? The Insurrection Act, and this is from the Brenner Institute, explained the law, which lets the president deploy the military domestically and use it for civilian law enforcement, is dangerously vague and in urgent need of reform. So this was written back in the good old days, 2022, when we thought that we had voted our way out of fascism and that Donald Trump was going to be in our rearview mirror. Yeah, that didn't last long. So let's unpack this, because I think that, again, it is important for us to understand the law, even and critically important for us to understand the law as it's being broken, right? So that we don't get to a place of normalization where we are normalizing what Donald Trump is doing. No, we need to understand exactly the laws that he is breaking, and that the military is breaking, that these troops are breaking their oath. We need to get a better picture. So here we go. The Insurrection Act needs a major overhaul. Originally enacted in 1792, the law grants the president the authority to deploy the U.S. military domestically and use it against Americans under certain conditions. While there are rare circumstances in which such authority might be necessary, the law, which has not been meaningfully updated in over 150 years, is dangerously overbroad and ripe for abuse. Enter in Project 2025, and the second Trump regime. So what is the Insurrection Act? The Insurrection Act authorizes the president to deploy military forces inside the United States to suppress, now listen to the language that is used, rebellion or domestic violence, or to enforce the law in certain situations. The statute implements Congress's authority under the Constitution to, quote, provide for calling forth the militia to execute the laws of the Union, suppress insurrections, and repel invasions. It is the primary exception to the Posse Comitatus Act, under which federal military forces are generally barred from participating in civilian law enforcement activities. Why do I say, folks, to pay attention to the language that is being used? Because if you listen to Donald Trump and his minion, Stephen Miller, the words that they've been using from the campaign trail all the way to now has been referring to everyone who disagrees with them and actually believes in the rule of law as what? Insurrectionists. It has been a way to take the weight, right, from what people refer to as the horrid events of January 6, 2021 as an insurrection, and instead now use that to label everyone that has decided that, guess what, we would still like to remain a part of and in a constitutional republic, right? Which in fact, they are doing their damnedest to ensure that we do not. Let us continue. What does invoking the Insurrection Act allow the president and the military to do? This is very important. Under normal circumstances, which guess what? None of us are living under, the Posse Comitatus Act forbids the U.S. military, including federal armed forces and national troops who have been called into federal service, from taking part in civilian law enforcement. This prohibition reflects an American tradition that views military interference in civilian government as being inherently dangerous to liberty. Okay? Invoking the Insurrection Act temporarily suspends this rule and allows the president to deploy the military to assist civilian authorities with law enforcement. That might involve soldiers doing anything from enforcing a federal court order to suppressing an uprising against the government. Okay, let's take a pause for a moment. Every bit of language that they have used over the last several months, if not the last year plus, has been about any dissent that this administration faces as being an uprising against the government. It is why on the government website, on the whitehouse.gov, that they now have a list of who they deem to be Democratic, quote unquote, terrorists and insurrectionists. They list them by name, and those include governors of blue states and Democratic representatives, right? That is their working list. They believe that we no longer actually have the right to lawfully protest, and that any sign of protest is in fact an uprising and a rebellion against this regime. So they are going to use this very vague law as a way to bring down a militarized hammer on all blue cities, starting with Chicago. Okay, let me continue. Of course, not every domestic use of the military involves law enforcement activity. Other laws, such as the Stafford Act, allow the military to be used to respond to natural disasters, public health crises, and other similar events without waiving the restrictions of the Comitatus Act. Now, When? When can the president invoke the Insurrection Act? Troops can be deployed under 3 sections of the Insurrection Act. Each of these sections is designed for a different set of situations. Unfortunately, the law's requirements are poorly explained and leave virtually everything up to the discretion of the president. Here is where our founding fathers absolutely and entirely fucked up. And why do I say that they fucked up? Well, because the assumption was that only people of noble heart and spirit would be president of the United States. They never foresaw or could use their imagination to believe what happens if, in fact, an insurrectionist is actually the president of the United States and there is no longer, right? No longer a constitution by which they're going to follow. You see, what Donald Trump has done over the last 10 years very successfully is pressure test our constitution and our democracy, which we all thought was built on actual laws, but come to find out it was basically a gentleman's handshake that we've all been doing for roughly 249 years, assuming that only good people, right, would want to be president of the United States, that it wasn't just open for any grifter, liar, racist, and piece of shit to be president of the United States. So here we go. Section 251 of the Insurrection Act allows the president to deploy troops if a state's legislature or governor, if the legislature is unavailable, requests federal aid to suppress an insurrection in that state. This provision is the oldest part of the law and the one that has most often been invoked. Now, folks, again, let's take a moment. Why has it been so important for the mayor of Chicago, Brandon Johnson, for J.B. Pritzker, the governor of Illinois, to continually go on television and hold press conferences that say that crime is low, there is no reason for the military guard to have a presence in Chicago or in the state of Illinois? They've been doing this so that it is very clear that nobody asked for this. Nobody asked for this, nor was there a need for this. But unfortunately, for the rest of us, there are 2 other sections that Donald Trump has at his disposal. While Section 251 requires state consent, Sections 252 and 253 allow the president to do whatever the fuck he wants. Let me be more specific. Allows the president to deploy troops without a request from the affected state, even against the state's wishes. Section 252 permits deployment in order to, quote, enforce the laws of the United States or, quote, to suppress rebellion. Whenever unlawful obstructions, combinations, or assemblage or rebellion make it impracticable to enforce federal law in that state by the ordinary course of judicial proceedings. Again, this is why Donald Trump and Stephen Miller and J.D. Vance and the rest of them have been getting on TV ad nauseum to tell the rest of us what a shithole place Chicago and Portland and LA are, and why people are begging for their help and for their aid, and why it is necessary that if we don't get the military involved, that these states are going to spin out of control in terms of violence and chaos. It is the fantasy that has been concocted by this regime in order to incite violence so that Donald Trump has reason for the Insurrection Act. Every single thing that ICE has been doing has been about invoking provocation. Okay? Pictures that I saw today, that I showed you video yesterday. White woman, unarmed, no mask, no nothing, no instrument of violence, being maced directly in her face for having the audacity to walk up to an ICE agent. I saw a priest, a white priest, maced by ICE in Chicago directly in the face for doing nothing other than trying to speak to ICE agents. They are, as Stephen Miller had requested, unleashed. They don't give a fuck. As a matter of fact, another video that was circulating showed Chicago police, right, telling a ICE vehicle that it could not drive directly into protesters, that it needed to divert its path. The person inside the vehicle said, I don't care. Why? Because they have been given a license to cause as much violence and harm and chaos as possible. And there are no guardrails. It's not as if, and so the law enforcement officer, the police in Chicago told them, if you drive this vehicle into those lawful protesters, I will arrest you. The response was, go ahead. I'll get out of it. This is a Gestapo. These are thugs. Their faces are covered because the Proud Boys and all of these people, Ku Klux Klan, this, that, and the other thing, they're all now officially have badges and officially are being paid by us, by our tax dollars. That's why their faces are covered. So we go on. Section 253 has two parts. The first allows the president to use the military in a state to suppress any insurrection, domestic violence, unlawful combination, or conspiracy that so hinders the execution of the laws, that any portion of the state's inhabitants are deprived of a constitutional right and state authorities are unable or unwilling to protect that right. Presidents Dwight D. Eisenhower and John F. Kennedy relied on this provision to deploy troops to desegregate schools in the South after the Supreme Court's landmark decision in Brown v. Board of Education. The second part of Section 253 permits the president to deploy troops to suppress any insurrection, domestic violence, unlawful. Folks, so here's the thing. As is stated here, this provision is so bafflingly broad that it cannot possibly mean what it says, or else it authorizes the president to use the military against any two people conspiring to break federal law. This is what Project 2025 was built for. You see, there are holes all inside and around our Constitution and our laws. There are constitutionalists that are part of the Heritage Foundation, a part of the Federalist Society, that have been looking for the ability to resurrect zombie laws from centuries past as a way to give Donald Trump and this regime carte blanche on militarizing the United States. And because the law is so fucking vague, and because they have stacked the federal benches and the Supreme Court, it is not a matter of if Donald Trump is going to invoke the Insurrection Act. It is a matter of when. And I believe that when is coming in the next couple of days. So, the question that so many of us have been asking is invoking the Insurrection Act the same as declaring martial law? The Insurrection Act does not authorize martial law. The term martial law has no established definition, but it is generally understood as a power that allows the military to take over the role of civilian government in an emergency. By contrast, The Insurrection Act generally permits the military to assist civilian authorities, whether state or federal, not take their place. Under current law, the president has no authority to declare martial law. But, dear friends, we are dealing with a regime that doesn't give a fuck about the rule of law. And so, this is their plan. It has been their plan. LA was a testing ground to see how far he can go. Now, Portland and Chicago are other tests, the next phase of escalation. Portland, he's being blocked, but Chicago, he's not. So it's full on militarized state. So you may be asking yourself, well, when was the Insurrection Act last invoked? The Insurrection Act was last invoked in 1992, when the governor of California requested military aid from then President George H.W. Bush in response to civil unrest in Los Angeles that followed the acquittal of 4 white police officers charged with beating Black motorist Rodney King. At 29 years and counting, this is the longest period the United States has ever gone without an invocation of the Insurrection Act. No presidents has unilaterally invoked the Insurrection Act against a state's wishes since Lyndon Johnson did so to provide protection for civil rights activists in Alabama marching from Selma to Montgomery in 1965. So we are here. We are at a place so desperate, dear friends, that we are hoping that the military upholds their oath. We have come to a place of such desperation because we know that Donald Trump and this regime does not care about the rule of law, does not care about the Constitution, doesn't care about a two-party system, doesn't care about your votes or your rights. And, I got to tell you, this is probably one of the most uncomfortable fucking I told you so's, because I've been saying this to a void for 10 years. No one wanted to be fucking right about this, but wanted to offer up a level of fucking urgency and awareness back in 2015 as Donald Trump was, flirting with fascism. Now he's in a full-on fucking affair in all of our faces with it. But everyone wanted to tell us, those that were screaming from the rooftops, that we were being hyperbolic, that it would never get here, that the institutions would hold, that all would be well. Don't worry, the vote will save us. And now we find ourselves on our hands and fucking knees, hoping that the military isn't going to turn on the people. And guess what? They've already begun to do it. There is not nearly as much fucking outrage today as there should be. And I don't mean outrage that Donald Trump wants to egg on so that he can invoke the Insurrection Act. I mean outrage from our fucking national media. I mean outrage from people actually getting out into the streets and saying, hell no, not fucking here. It doesn't matter whether or not we are in Chicago. It doesn't matter whether or not we are in Portland or LA. This is coming to your front fucking door. It's times like this where I'm like, Europe has it right because they stay out in the street. In France and in Italy, Because they know. Why? Because they have the history of authoritarianism and fascism. It is embedded and has been embedded into the culture. America has lies embedded in us of exceptionalism and no, it will never happen here mentality. And so you're so busy pulling your fucking head out of the sand. Meanwhile, Gilead has been built up around us. And then you have some who are now in the pathway of destruction, who are finally now saying what the rest of us have been saying for 10 years. And it is J.B. Pritzker and others who sat down and are sitting down with Rachel Maddow and in other places and saying, listen to what Donald Trump wants to do. Here are the plans. It's as clear as fucking day.
Well, the broader goal, I believe, is the militarization of major American cities before the 2026 elections. Let me be clear about what's going on the streets of Chicago. They have dressed ICE and CBP in fatigues, put them in military gear, including with automatic weapons, and had them marching up and down major streets in downtown Chicago. It's a signal that they're trying to send that it's okay to have troops on your street, that this would be a welcome thing for people who live in Chicago. Nobody here welcomes it, by the way. I mean, literally, as they're walking down the street, people are yelling at them. But they think they can get people used to the idea. And next year, I fear that what they're going to do is deploy these folks eventually to polling places and say they're protecting the vote. Donald Trump knows that without shenanigans and without these breaches of the Constitution, that he's going to lose the Congress. And if he loses, he's going to immediately, in the aftermath of the election, do what he said he might do in 2020, which is use the military to confiscate the ballot boxes and count the votes, claiming that there's fraud. Remember, he's called up all 50 states' election data to the Department of Justice because they want to review all 50 states for fraud. And they won't tell you exactly what they're going to do, but I fear that these are all connected. And
you fear they're all connected because they are all connected. Because exactly what Pritzker has laid out is exactly what Waj and I have been saying for years now. Why? Because it was written pretty clearly in Project 2025. Why? Because the first term was about testing the fences. The second term is about bulldozing your way through this country. A country that can be wildly taken off guard because everyone is too busy to pay attention to politics. Speaking of which, I can't stand this man. I can't stand him. But, you know, while all of this is happening, we are also in the midst of what? A government shutdown. And a government shutdown that, again, is part of Project 2025 because it allows for Donald Trump, led by Russell Vought, the architect of Project 2025, to not just furlough people, but to fire them completely and shutter agencies and then not have to restore them, right? Okay. What is also the reason for the government shutdown? Oh, the name that we will never forget for as long as we fucking live. And that is Epstein.
There was a moment earlier this year you swore in 2 Republican members during the pro forma session. So why not swear in Adelita Grijalva, who was elected 2 weeks ago during the pro forma session? Does it have to do with her 218th signature on the discharge petition, the Epstein discharge?
No, it has nothing to do with that at all. We will swear her in when everybody gets back. It's a ceremonial duty. Look, we'll schedule it, I guess, as soon as she wants. It has nothing to do with it. We're in pro forma session because there is nothing for the House to do. The House has done its job. People say, why don't you do more? Let's do more. Now you should do something. We already did something. It was passing a clean CR. We did it.
Passing the clean CR that would gut Medicaid and Medicare as a way to pay for their tax breaks to millionaires and billionaires. And they need Democrats' votes in order to do just that. And so you hear him being like, yeah, we'll swear in as soon as she wants. Well, she got the job 2 weeks ago, and she's been on national television saying, I'm ready to work, just waiting for, Mike Johnson to swear me in. So if I were her, I would just be following him around the fucking house. I would just be following him around the Capitol with a Bible and being like, are you ready to go now? Are you ready to go now? Like, I'm here. Showed up for work. He's so full of shit. It's like, it's really hard to listen to. And then there's even worse news. And this is something, folks, I feel for those that are employed by the federal government. And that is not just people that are inside the Beltway and inside of Washington, D.C. It is for people around the country. And this is why I say when folks are like, I don't know what to do, I don't know what to do, get to know your neighbors. Are any of them now going to be going without pay? If so, organize a meal train for them. Organize like some assistance for them as they're being forced to go into work and not get paid. And if they don't show up, they could lose their jobs entirely. But now Johnson is adding something else to the fucking mix. And I want you to take a listen to this, because when I heard this today, I said, oh, wow. Oh, 1 second. I got so much going on. Okay. Now, let's take a listen.
To whether the furloughed civilian employees of the federal government will receive back pay, it is true that in previous shutdowns, many or most of them have been paid for the time that they were furloughed. But there is new legal analysis. I don't know the details. I just saw a headline this morning. I'm not read in on it, and I haven't spoken to the White House about it. But there are some legal analysts who are saying that that may not be appropriate or necessary in terms of the law requiring that back pay be provided. So I'm sure that'll be there will be a lot of discussion about that. But there are legal analysts who think that that is not something that government should do. That, if that is true, that should turn up the urgency and the necessity of the Democrats doing the right thing here. Even more pain, more than I just listed, for more people.
Do you hear that son of a bitch? That he has just said, oh, there's legal analysis. This motherfucker who, by the way, when asked, oh, did you see this? Did you hear this? Apparently never has his phone in his hand and never watches the news, right? When he's being asked about pertinent things. But now all of a sudden he's like, oh, I heard that there's legal analysis out there. By the way, legal analysis is not the fucking law. Those are two different things. But if you listen to the fucking double dutch that he is trying to play right now, with basically stating that those people who are being forced to work without pay, that they should not expect that if the government were to come back into session, that they will receive their back pay. Are you fucking kidding me? Because again, do you know who is still being paid? He is. Everyone in the House, everyone in the Senate, the president, the vice president of the United States, oh, their pay is still coming in just fine. But you're telling me that public servants who already don't make a lot of money, who are now being forced to go without, that they can't even consider that they may be able to catch up on their bills if, in fact, Donald Trump or this fucking wayward, lawless, shiftless, shameless group of motherfuckers decides that they don't want to pay them. When I heard that today, y'all, sick to my stomach. And then guess who else got in on the conversation? Because he can't help himself. Take a listen.
Why do you say some federal workers should not get their back pay? Why do you say some?
Well, you're going to have to figure that out, okay? Ask the Democrats that question.
Mr. President, just to follow up there, I mean, the law says that when the government is reopened, that workers will receive their back pay. So are you going to defy the law there, or what are you hoping?
I follow the law, and what the law says is correct, and I follow the law.
Oh, now you follow the law? What the law says is correct, and I follow the law? Oh, is that why then when a judge told you that you could not put California federal troops on the ground in Portland, that you decided to circumvent that and she had to call a midnight session because you all follow the law so well? Y'all follow the law so well that your borders are scooped up $50,000 in cash. And when Pam Bondi is being asked on Capitol Hill today, did he keep that cash? Did he report that cash? And she all of a sudden got her motherfucking tongue? So you follow the law? Miss me with the insults. I am telling you, folks, we are all holding on by a fucking thread. Okay? Holding on by a thread. And what's worse, because it always gets worse, is that the air traffic control, folks, air traffic control facility responsible for flights approaching and departing Nashville International Airport, well, breaking news from CNN was that they're going to close tonight for 5 hours. Oh, don't worry. They're still going to be having flights. There's just, no one's going to be in the air traffic control tower. Please, I wish to God that I was kidding. Unfortunately, I absolutely am fucking not.
CNN on a story we've been tracking all afternoon. The air traffic control facility responsible for flights approaching and departing Nashville International Airport are set to close for 5 hours tonight because of short staffing. The Federal Aviation Administration says that flights will still be allowed to continue flying during the closure, but pilots are going to have to contact the Regional Air Traffic Control Center for permission to enter the airspace.
So the reason being given for the staff shortage, that's not immediately clear. Secretary of Transportation Sean Duffy, though, did say on Monday an increased number of controllers have been calling out sick since the start of the shutdown. So we'll continue to follow all of those developments for you.
So I want to tell you this. So the motherfucking Road Rules reality TV transportation secretary, Sean Duffy, found himself on Fox News today, right? And then you had that motherfucker, Brian Kilmeade, the one who said we should murder homeless people and still has a job. So Sean Duffy is relaying the facts that air traffic controllers are not showing up for work because, in fact, I don't know, would you be showing up for work if you were no longer being paid? Do you think that we all enjoy our jobs that fucking much? That, like, if you're not scooping a check so that you can take care of yourself and your family, that you're going to be showing up for work? And now you have Mike Johnson and the president of the United States kind of playing with your fucking money in your face, talking about, oh, well, maybe they won't get their paychecks back. And so if this goes on for a month that you've just worked for free out of the goodness of your heart. Okay. Folks, Sean goes on there on Fox saying, yeah, by the way, people aren't showing up for work. And Brian Kilmeade says, I don't understand why they're not showing up for work. It's not as if they've lost a paycheck yet. It's only been a week. I would like Brian Kilmeade to lose his paycheck indefinitely. But somehow that motherfucker still has a job. The callousness with which these people navigate their lives should be studied because it is disgusting. And there clearly is something that is missing up here and in here that allows them to spout the type of hot, disgusting trash that they spout on a regular basis. I mean, it is, folks, the word obscene doesn't do it justice. Okay? It doesn't do it justice. And so we go on because, I think that it is really important for folks to understand, to be reminded on a regular basis why Democrats did not sign on to this bullshit, right? Continuing resolution that would gut Medicaid, right? I want you to listen, right, to Tom Foreman on CNN break down exactly what is going to happen if, in fact, the Obamacare subsidies expire. Okay? So you take a listen and you tell me, oh, maybe this is important. Folks actually need to know this.
Democrats are digging in on their demands to extend enhanced Obamacare subsidies that expire in January before they agree to reopen the government. Now, a new poll shows 3/4 of Americans say they actually do want the subsidies extended, including 59% of Republicans and 57% of MAGA supporters are in favor. But do voters want the government shut down over this fight? And what exactly are those subsidies? Who gets them and what happens if they go away? Well, to answer all that, CNN's Tom Foreman is here to break it down. So, Tom, what can you tell us?
Well, I can tell you that the Obamacare subsidies are used by about 22 million Americans, a little bit more. They were first passed during COVID, renewed under Biden, basically by holding health care premiums set as a percentage of income, that kind of thing. The goal here was to help people who might need financial help, who aren't necessarily in poverty, but who are struggling. So if you look at what happens if they expire, it becomes a very different ballgame. 4 million people become uninsured almost immediately based on some estimates out there. Dramatic rate hikes would follow as well. How high would those rate hikes be?
Look
well,
at
if you're
this
making
shit.
$18,000 a year, not much, your current premium for this is $0. That's great, but then $378 is your new premium. $378 is the change. If you're making $35,000 a year, your current premium, $1,033. Your new premium, if it expires, look at that, more than double. So up 15, almost 1,600. And if you're 55,000, 4,000 jumps up to 5,478, another giant jump there. And look at this on what they call higher earners. Imagine an older couple out there.
Look at what they
who's making
consider higher earners.
$85,000 a year. That's not a huge.
85,000.
Billionaires or anything like that. But that's a higher earner in this case. Here's their current premium. $7,225 per year. That's 8.5% of their income. That's sort of the top end under the current rules. Under the change, if it expires, that will jump to $25,000 per year. That's almost a 30% increase. That's almost 30% of their income, not an income, 30% of their income for the year. That's a tough thing if you're making $85,000 a year. Now, Republicans are looking at this and by and large saying, we're aware of all of that, we can get to that at some point, but what we're really worried right now is the idea that somebody who's undocumented might be covered by this. Well, the law itself says that is not the case. It actually says the only people who could get this would be people who are lawfully present in the United States, beyond citizens, lawfully present in the United States, so people who have come through the right channels, who have been approved to be here while they're seeking asylum, or maybe they hold green cards or whatever it is. They're in the country legally. So there would be some instances maybe, but this, from Democratic standpoint, is a minuscule part of this program. And Republicans are saying, but let's focus on this, and we'll get to that other part later on. Democrats are saying the other part is the important part. You have to talk about that. And if you look at who's going to be hit if this expires, you can understand why some Republicans are also saying, yeah, maybe we need to get around to this now. Because look, these are the hardest hit states if the credits expire. California, Texas, Florida, Georgia, North Carolina. That's where you have the highest number of enhanced subsidy recipients. And this one, this one, this one, this one, all voted red in the last presidential election. The truth is, if these expire, this is going to hit a lot of people in this country, millions of people, and a lot of them in red states that backed Donald Trump.
Folks, I know that some people are saying, right, and I want to be very clear. In some parts of this country, $85,000 is a lot of money. In most places in this country, It is not. And we're not talking about an individual making 85,000. They were talking about a couple making 85,000. And now spending 30% of that, and that is considered the thing. They were talking about a household making 85,000. And folks, I just want you to understand that is not a lot of money. Not when 30 fucking percent will be going to your healthcare costs. No one can afford that. And the fact that they think that 85,000 is quote unquote high earners is absolutely insane. For a family. I cannot express how fucked this country is. Like, I just, there are some days when I am just like at a loss at the destruction that has been caused in 10 months. Farms lost, people killing themselves because they can no longer take care of their families. Once these subsidies expire, which is what they are going for, the manufactured chaos that this regime has been working so goddamn hard to create is going to turn into real fucking chaos. And I just remind you, there are more guns than there are people in this country. And while Donald Trump and Republicans continue to call this the Democratic shutdown and, oh, it's on Democrats and why not ask Democrats at a time when people's homes are being blown up and people are being murdered, right? No one is buying that it's Democrats who don't control the executive branch, the fucking legislative branch. Like, no one is believing it. The polls show that. Donald Trump said, I alone can fix this. He actually meant I alone can break this. And that's exactly what he's been doing. It's astounding. It is astounding. And just, again, so we understand where all this is headed and what they all want, I bring you the real president, the one that no one elected at all.
Physical danger. So you have to clear a safe perimeter so that ICE officers can carry out their duties without being an imminent threat of physical harm. And the fact that we've normalized these attacks on ICE officers, that is how you end up in a society in which domestic terrorism becomes the norm, and eventually elections don't carry the day because violence beats votes. And that's what we're seeing attempted. And so when we see a muscular response from the federal government, it's because we're not going to let violence beat votes.
You heard him, right? That your votes don't matter because they are manufacturing the chaos that they are saying is incredibly violent, and ICE officers their lives are in danger. No, more like they've shot and killed multiple people so far. Right? More like they are the ones that are causing the violence. They are the ones that are causing the harm. But he just said, your vote, violence trumps votes. They have no desire for elections moving forward. It's why Donald Trump said, vote for me this time. You'll never have to worry about voting again. And everybody thought, oh, isn't that funny? Isn't that an interesting comment? And now we're here. And do you know how I know that today is the day where everyone has run out of fucks to give and that we have completely divorced ourselves from what is proper and what is right and what politicians should and shouldn't say? And I just want to shout out Kamala Harris today, who is on her book tour and just said the truth and took the muzzle off and stopped listening to everyone else tell her what she should say, and instead, finally, just for a few seconds, said what the fuck she actually wanted to say and what she should have said a long time ago, because fuck the rules.
Because there is so much about this moment that is trying to make people feel like they've lost their mind. When in fact, these motherfuckers are crazy.
Just to reiterate, she said, there is so much about this moment that is being created to make us feel like we've all lost our minds. When in fact, these motherfuckers are crazy. Because they are. They're absolutely fucking batshit crazy. And had we just spoke plainly, told the truth, when Donald Trump stopped talking about policy, I don't know if he ever talked about policy. When they changed their position from policy to power, and Democrats still wanted to keep talking about policy, that was the mistake. When Donald Trump was able to let go and divorce himself from protocol and from proper speech and from decorum, Democrats should have let it go too. Sometimes you do actually have to get down in the mud. If that's where the fighting is happening, you can't hover above it. You got to get down and scrap with the fucking best of them. Now we're in hell. And honestly, today is one of those days where I don't know how we find our way back up. I really don't. But, I got to say this. Shout out to the people of Chicago who continue to show resistance. Shout out to the mayor and Pritzker who are using every channel that they can in order to fight back against this regime. And every single city in a blue state needs to take note of what is happening there, because it's coming to where you are. Folks, I tell you that this is why, and we'll talk about the right-wing takeover of media later this week and the monopoly that is being created by the Ellison family, who are the newfangled Murdochs that have just put Barry Weiss as the editor-in-chief of CBS News, a right-wing, hardline Zionist. They want to control everything, what you see, what you hear, what you say, what you do. They are taking control over every single part of this country. You have got to fight for your right to exist, to speak, to organize. It is going to take each and every single one of us. And I will tell you that I am terrified, but I'm not going to stop talking. I worry every single day, but I'm not going to stop speaking truth to power. So do what you can where you are. Support independent voices. Subscribe, like, comment, share these videos with your family, with your friends, with your colleagues. Get the message out. Figure out how to support on the ground in Chicago. If you're in Chicago and you're in the chat or you're watching this later, put in the comment section what you need. We have got to do everything that we can with what we have and protest while we can and speak while we still can, because we are running out of time. That is it from me today, dear friends, on the Danielle Moodie Show. For those of you who are new here, it is Town Hall Tuesday, which means that at the end of the show, I open it up for questions where you can type question in all capital letters and follow that up with your question. And I do my best for the last 10 minutes of the show to get to your questions. So for those who are new, like, comment, and subscribe. And let's get into Town Hall Tuesday. This is one of the catchiest songs. Like, I'm always like jamming and then it cuts out. Okay, it is Town Hall Tuesday, dear friends. And for those of you that are new, type question in all capital letters, followed by your question. It can be about anything, and I will do my best to get to it for the next 10 minutes. So, question, Daryl. I always love when you give me the WNBA questions. Do you see Kathy Engelbert getting fired by the WNBA before the end of 2025? Yes, Daryl, I absolutely do. And for those who do not know, Kathy Engelbert is the commissioner for the WNBA who has caught a whole bunch of fire from one of the stars of the WNBA, Nafisa Collier, who is also the co-founder of Unrivaled, that came for Kathy's neck, as well as leadership in the office, for what she believes has been a lack of accountability, a lack of responsibility, and poor shit leadership. And the commissioner of the NBA, who is like the leader of the WNBA, unfortunately, has said that relationships have been broken, trust has been broken, and there is a lot that needs to be done. So yes, Daryl, I think she out. Question, what's your favorite candy? Oh, interesting. I have two. Anything that is really like sweet and sour. So I am partial to Sour Patch Kids as well as gummy bears. I love them both. Thank you for that. Megan, funny. Question, have you always been a badass? I don't consider myself a badass now, but I don't know. I guess you would have to ask my friends and family that question. I don't know if I could answer it, but maybe. This is a good question, Inferno. How do I communicate to others the shit that we're in? Look, share videos, and not just mine, but I'm like, share news clippings, share 60-second videos, so that people understand the gravity of the situation that we're in. But then there'll be those people, you know, that you can't wait for them to get on board, and you just got to keep it pushing. Do you know what I'm saying? You can do your best, and then you got to move along. Question, dog or cats? Very good, solid question. So I grew up with cats, right? Like I had cats as pets when I was younger. But my girlfriend has the cutest fucking dog, who some of you have seen. His name is Pierre. He is a schnoodle, a schnauzer and a poodle mix. And now I'm obsessed. I'm obsessed with little dogs. Not little, do you know what I'm saying? But like toddler-sized dogs, like 20-pound dogs. I love poodle mixes. They're so cute. So I feel like I'm a dog person now. With the NSPM 7, I feel that Donald Trump wants to catch up with the Netanyahu. Do you feel that way? Yes, I do. 155%. Donald Trump has been admiring dictators and authoritarians for a long time. I mean, his ex-wife, you know, the one that he buried on his golf course, said that he had Mein Kampf as like the only book that he's ever read. So yeah, do I think that Donald Trump is going to do his best? in order to get that done? Yeah. Do I think that the courts are enabling him in a lot of ways? Yep, sure do. What are my thoughts on Tony Blair running Gaza? I think Tony Blair should stop running his fucking mouth. And I think he's disgusting. I used to really like Tony Blair back way back in the late 90s, early 2000s. And he has really shown his ass as a total and complete Zionist and opportunist. And it's disgusting. I mean, we've been in a civil war, Abe. When does civil war start? This has been a cold civil war for the past 10 years. It is now just escalating into physical violence, but we're here. Oh, have you read Urvashi Vaid's book, Virtual Equality, published in the 1990s? No, I haven't, but Urvashi was a really dear colleague of mine. She passed away a couple of years ago, and just always like staunch supporter, progressive, brilliant, queer woman, and really always appreciated her guidance and support over the years. Yes, Electron, are you watching the WNBA finals? Correct. Tomorrow night is game 4. Is it game 4 or is it game 3? It's game 3. So far, no. Is it game 4? Somebody tell me. Well, the game is tomorrow, 8 p.m. Eastern. I'm going for the Aces, and the Aces right now are up by 2. Yes, so the game tomorrow is game 3. In a 7-game series. So exciting. And it's a very wonderful distraction from all this fuckery. I've been saying this, KB. Question: are there any movements for withholding taxes as per no taxation without representation? I've been saying. I said it last year. That if Donald Trump became president again, you might as well just send the check directly to him, because it sure as hell isn't going to anything that you need, like infrastructure, public schools, libraries, anything like that. So yeah, I think that there should be a movement for this. But is there? That I don't know. Do I think that sugar belongs in tomato sauce? No, I do not. I think that that is crazy. And I see that people do this as a way to like bring down or counterbalance the acidity of tomatoes. But no one in Italy does that. No one. Okay. I love these questions because they get me to not just think about politics. Oh, this is a good, interesting question. Ghostface Killer, how long do you think it will take for wealthy Black Americans to leave America en masse? I think that a lot of wealthy Black people, a lot of wealthy people of color are beginning to leave, or at least begin their plans to leave. But I don't even know what it means to be wealthy anymore. I guess it means to not live paycheck to paycheck. I have no idea, but I know that there are some folks that I have talked to that are absolutely having family meetings and conversations about what to do and where to go, because they know we're not safe here and that their wealth is not going to protect them. Have I read Kamala's book? No, and I actually need to go and get it. I have like 87,000 books that are on my nightstand, but I definitely do want to read hers. Looking for questions. Have you heard any more regarding the results of the second autopsy on Trey Reed? I believe that what I heard, and this is about the lynching in Mississippi, was that he was beaten beforehand. So did he do that to himself? Don't think so. All right. I'm going to look for the last question. Philip, you'll be the last question. Do you fear October 18th could be a flashpoint? I mean, you know, I don't know. It feels like everything could be a flashpoint. It feels like if Donald Trump is looking for a flashpoint, he's trying to create one. So do I think that people coming out in mass and protesting No King's Day will be that flashpoint? I don't know. But I think that if you want to provoke people, you can provoke people. And then make it look like it was the violence of these protesters who are, dancing in the streets and holding witty signs. So it's definitely going to be something that I keep my eyes on. Maybe I'll be live most of that day, going back and forth with folks. Maybe we'll talk to Waj about that and see how we can cover that No Kings rally. All right, folks, thank you so much for all of the fantastic questions today. Always appreciate you. I also want to take a moment and shout out the super stickers and the super thanks. Cool customer, thank you so much, Megan. Ron, every dollar helps. Design Chick, as always, appreciate you. Ron, thank you so much. Lee, Paul, appreciate you. Ghostface Kill, as always, thank you. Polly W, good to see you. Thank you. Susan, our fantastic moderator, appreciate you. Corey, PJ, always coming in with the big cash money. Thank you so very much for your generosity. Joanna, Ketcha, did I say that right? And Eternal, appreciate you always. Thank you guys. This is, as I say, independent media. We are losing our media by the day. The consolidation and the push to the right means that outlets like CBS and ABC that you used to be able to trust, you can't any longer. And so there are people like myself, like Waj, like Aaron, like, Mary, like so many that are stepping up to try and deliver you news with integrity and truth and passion. So if you do have the ability to support financially, please do. But if you have the ability to just hit like, share, subscribe, and comment to feed that algorithm fairy, it all goes a long way. Folks, tomorrow is Wednesday, and I will be live on Substack at 12 p.m. Eastern with Jared Yates Sexton, and then again at 3 p.m. for the midweek check-in with Waj, and then at 5 p.m. right back here. So do make sure to tune in. As always, power to the people and to all the people power. Get woke, stay sane, and in these extraordinarily dangerous times, dear friends, do stay safe. I will see you tomorrow. Be well and continue to take care of yourselves and everyone around you. Dear friends, appreciate you.